Well, welcome back to Things Hidden. I'm David Gornoski here with my friend Shannon Braswell, who joins me across the fruited plains in Seattle, Washington. How you doing, Shannon?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
Great. And we're on
Yeah.
the edge of one of the holiest rituals in our country, which is an
Mm,
election. And that's a very,
indeed.
very important ritual. We can talk all day about how we don't like politics, but a lot of our neighbors do.
Yeah.
And it's a big ritual. It's a big sacred event, and a lot of people have their favorite character they want them to win,
Right.
and it's very powerful for people. Their emotions, their imaginations, their fantasies all get stirred up in this time. But here we are. We're going to try to look at culture like we always do, right?
Right on. Let's do it,
So,
man.
I wanted to start kind of the conversation. There was a big, Joe Rogan's been doing a lot of big interviews in the last week with a lot of controversial figures. He had on Alex Jones, which really ticked off the Spotify guys, and then he had on Kanye West before that. And Kanye, of course, made a lot of memes out of his appearance. A lot of interesting things to think about, and I just kind of wanted to get a reaction on your overall take. I know you looked at a lot of the interview with Joe Rogan and Kanye West, but here are two figures who are kind of hard to nail down in the politics game, right? Joe Rogan, I remember back when he endorsed Ron Paul, but now he kind of says he's progressive. He wants Bernie Sanders health care and stuff. So you don't know where Joe goes. And at the same time, Kanye West, he endorses Trump, but then he also talks very favorably of Bernie Sanders. So he's
Right.
another, both of these guys are kind of like, hard to pin down, kind of like tricksters, if
Mm,
you want to talk about mythology for a second. And, I know Jonathan Peugeot has gone on a lot of different videos. He's the Orthodox wood carver, talking about how, Kanye, in his view, is kind of like a holy fool. He's like in a time in which everything's upside down, right? In a time in which everything's subverted, it takes it takes a jester, it takes a stand-up comedian, it takes someone who's had a lot of crazy outbursts, who's out there on the fringe, to kind of bring us back to normalcy by kind of inverting the inversion.
right. Right. Yeah. I had said something on Facebook in a group. No, I think it was like Mimetic Theory, the Mimetic Theory group or something like that. But I don't have Facebook anymore. But this is just a couple of, I don't know, a while back. Anyways, I
Your
had
wild days.
in my in my wild days, where I had asked the group, I said, if you have the original, you know, I had said something about, an anthropologist's idea of the trickster God, right? And that the trickster God is supposed to kind of bring in the second, uh, you know, the second origin story, or the the reunify humans with the gods or God or something like that, right? And I mean, you talk about, like, you think about, like, Prometheus or Perseus or something like that with the fire. You think about Anansi, the Ashanti trickster god, who, like, turns into a spider and he steals from the heavens and stuff like that. And I said, well, if we talk about a trickster god, and then we talk about, like, an almighty god, you know, uh, you want to talk about the All Father Odin or whatever, and then you talk about this trickster god. Wouldn't Jesus be kind of like the trickster god, right? And I didn't get any answer. I don't know if I don't remember if I got an answer or not, but I don't think I got an answer. But the way I look at it is more like, if Jesus is the trickster God, what he does is, like, it's a inversion of the trickster God, right? So he doesn't do these things to trick his father, right? Like that, how the trickster gods or the trickster heroes do, right? They don't steal. he doesn't steal from God, right? He doesn't, lie to his Father about what he's going to do for mankind or whatnot, right? They're in unison. They're connecting with each other. They're in agreement. And so, God, Christ is not coming down to, serve mankind and at the same time have his Father angry at him. And then we go back into this cycle all over again where, you got to have another trickster hero or trickster God. So, yeah, it could be the case that Kanye is playing the holy fool. It could also be the case that, it's, hard to tell what Kanye is, if he's really sincere about, his beliefs and where he's coming from, then, you know, even if he was the holy fool, right? Like, to be a holy fool is to be someone that is, calling out for righteousness, right? Calling out for, what is right. But of course, you do it in a way that um, is a little ambiguous or not very clear, right? You know, um, in Ethiopia, they used to have this tradition where they call it the wax and gold tradition, where you know, it's this idea that what you say, what you say, and what you actually mean are two different things. So I might be, you know, um, you might have the priests or something like that, or a deacon, or you know, something like that, speaking about the king, and he might be praising the king, and all his attributes and stuff like that. But underneath, he's criticizing his rule. He's criticizing his behavior. He's criticizing his actions. So you have this wax and gold tradition, or you have this, kind of foolishness on the outside, but underneath it is this just some real truth. So yeah, I mean, it could definitely
And Paul
be the
says
case.
that the gospel is the foolishness to the world, right?
Right, right, yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it's
if you do the gospel, if you imitate Jesus, you are going to look like a fool or a trickster in some sense, right? Because you're not going to be
yeah,
easily categorizable or whatever, right? You're not going to be able to be defined,
right,
and you're not going to be able to, to fulfill the expected role models that are attractive for the crowd. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, I mean,
If you're
uh,
unconditionally loving to your enemies, that's not very attractive for people to imitate. They call that a pushover. They call that a loser in popular culture.
yeah, and it's also difficult to know whether to trust that person or not, right? Because it's like, well, if you're being this all loving person, how do I know that you won't be? How do I know you'll stay that way? How do I know you'll be
Too good to be true.
that? Yeah, it's too good to be true, right? It's like
What's the
when a
catch?
woman,
Yeah.
yeah, like when a woman finds a good man or something like that,
Yeah.
or the other way around, right? Like, how do I know that this person, who's beautiful and actually loves me or something like that, is gonna actually really loves me, you know what I mean, or is really sincere? But I think that's kind of like a conviction for Christians to really think about. Like, if you really believe in the Christian message, then
Right.
this is not something you can't be, you know, lukewarm, right? You gotta actually mean it, or don't, right? Because Christ is displaying that. He
Mm-hmm.
tells you, I'm not lying to you, right? I'm not pretending with you. I'm not the trickster God, right? I'm the one that, me and my Father are in unison, right, with this. And we came to bring you a message of redemption, you know what I mean? And salvation. And I actually want to engage, you know, in trying to create a reunification between God and mankind. right?
Save from what? What are we saved from in that message? You know.
Well, I mean, I guess theologically, I mean, I guess you could frame it as saved from the fall, right? Saved from like the first being outcast from the Garden of Eden or what have you, right? So there's this, you know, um, it's I think that the trouble that people have when they think about Christianity is, of course, the idea that like, is there really a redemption going on with Christianity, like with Christ, right? Because you would have to, like if you say, well, I'll just give an example, like, well, people don't have to be in monogamous marriages. They don't have to be, with one woman and stuff like that. We're not built that way. That wasn't, biologically, we evolved to where a man could have multiple women, multiple offspring and things like that, right? We take the Christian approach, right? Um, I could kind of see it the way that Christ would say, it's like, well, that wasn't the intention. That wasn't actually that's not the real intention. The intention was for a man to be with one woman, right? They would become one flesh, right? So that's not that's a Christian perspective, right? That's a Christian way of thinking about uh, relationships, and that's not the way that um, our world, or our contemporary world or whatever views it, right? We think of these evolutionary processes and things like that, man coming from ape-like species or whatever, and when you see apes or and things like that, it's you have that alpha male who has this harem of women, right? And so that it's the idea that, well, that's the way it must have been in the beginning, right? That's the way it must have been for human beings, right? And then we gain these like moral teachings from Christianity about one woman and one man and whatnot, right? But it's like that's where it's like you have to be either hot or cold. You have to believe theologically that the intention was for Adam and Eve to be one flesh, you know what I mean, and that was the initial um that was the origin of man's, I guess, relationship status, right? And that somehow, because we fell from grace, we were banished from the Garden of Eden. We woke up to, uh, the difference between, you know, uh, the knowledge of good and evil or what have you, right? Um, now we struggle with making these decisions as to whether we want to pick the original way that Christians are talking about, or whether we want to pick, say, I guess, the way of evolution, right? But some I've heard, of course, people say, well, evolutionary theory is nothing more than um, another theology. It's another way of thinking. So, um, you know, um, not to get off tangent, but it's just um, I I think when we think about redemption, it has to do with this idea of like being reconnected to God, right? And someone has to initiate that, right? And human beings, I guess the way I think of it is like we couldn't initiate that because we didn't know how, right? We just kept having these cycles of sacrifice and things like that, and we didn't really actually know how to redeem ourselves. I mean, I guess the idea is that like you're not supposed to redeem yourself. Somebody else is supposed to redeem you, right? That's the whole, I guess, intention behind redemption. you know um, Someone else is supposed to see the good in you, or forgive you, or bring you back, right? To see you as worthy of you know, redeeming. So, you know, that's the way I look at that. But you know, when it comes to Christianity, like it's I think that the hard part is to know how to deal with this in a way that doesn't sound completely theological, right? Like, how do you make it more human? You know, how do you make redemption more, I guess, less theological in wording? You know what I mean? And that's I think the difficult part is that we don't know how to. We still think of Christianity in this. The language around Christianity is caught up in, like, old language. There is no um, way to redefine it, and I think that's what makes it um, difficult. You know.
Hebrews 9:22 says, "And by the law almost all things are purged with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission."
Right. Right.
And I
Yeah.
think it kind of has to do with skin in the game. It's like, in
Yeah.
order for things to be solved between humans, there has to be skin in the game.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the question of Christianity is, whose skin in the game is going to be proffered for problems,
Right.
right?
Right.
Is it going to be something that you pick somebody else outside of you, or can you roll up your sleeves and sacrifice a bit of yourself?
Right.
So
Yeah.
something has to give, is another
Right.
word, and
Right.
something has to feed the beast of human relationships,
Right. Yeah.
because you're going to hurt people's feelings, and you're going to be misinterpreted, and you're going to be jealous, and you're going to be petty, and you're going to be grumpy, and you're going to be selfish, and you're going to
Mhm.
be greedy and competitive. You're going to be all those things as a human being.
Yeah.
And that stuff bottles up and it spills out into uh, a situation in which you need to be saved from, right? You got to be saved
Right.
from that situation. And the
Right.
question is, what is going to save you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these are these are these are theological. I think these are really theological questions, and it's very difficult to actually,
I think it's
you know.
very. I'll give you an example.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let me give you an example. So I'll do it the political stuff, because that's
Okay.
given an application. So
Right.
if you're talking about being saved,
Yeah.
saved from what, right? Saved from scandals, saved from tit for tat, never ending conflict, saved from scapegoating and blame, right? So
Hmm.
what's the deal? What's it going to be if you have a situation where you don't you're afraid that, you know, your community will be turned into chaos and hell if you allow your neighbor to, do a drug or sell a drug? At that point, you have a choice. If you're thinking about your civic engagement on this question, you can choose to sacrifice your neighbor, to shed his blood or her blood, so to speak, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
We do it in a more sterile, bureaucratic form today. We
Hmm.
we don't cut your head off. We put you in a police car. We take you away from your family. We make it so you can't vote when you get out. We make it so you're a second class citizen when you try to apply for a job. You got to pay fines. You got to report to where you are just because you got high or sold something that made somebody else high who was an adult. So you do all that, and so you have to decide for yourself: if I sacrifice my neighbor, will it create the salvation of the problem that I'm worried about, which is, if we let everybody do drugs, or if we let this guy do a drug, other people can do it, then other people can do it. And before you know it, the whole place has gone to hell. And so you have to choose in that moment: am I going to sacrifice that neighbor? Or am I going to sacrifice my fear of my neighbor's freedom? Am I going to take it? Can I
Yeah.
take that? Can I take that fear of
Yeah.
saying just down the road, there's a guy or whoever who's doing a drug, and can I handle that? Can I handle their freedom? Can I allow them to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling? Or
Right.
should I have a messianic state come
Yeah.
in and sacrifice them or threaten them so that we can create the heaven on earth that we want, which is a
Right.
safe, secure neighborhood? So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's like I see that from that message of without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Meaning, for you, it's gonna hurt a little bit if you're scared of drugs to trust and faith that there's another way to solve this rather than let it all be free. Right? You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I do see that. I mean, because it's I mean, you could say that on an international level or global level too,
Yeah.
right? Like, we've talked about this, in the sense that, do you let other country, okay, like what's going on right now in France, right? Like what's going on right now with, you know, with Europe and everything going on with the terrorist attacks and stuff like that, right? Um, it's kind of like, do you let this thing, how do you deal with that, right? And I remember when Jean-Luc Mary Jean-Michel Ugurlian, Dr. Jean-Michel Ugurlian said that, and I think you alluded to this too, is that you have to, in order for people to, I guess, come to a conversion moment, what you're doing has to be so attractive or appealing that they want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want to come to that side, right? They want to get on board with your way of thinking and way of living, right? Um, and I would say, like, maybe that's what's wrong with, say, something like laissez-faire, you know what I mean, in France. They're not picking a side. What they want to do is leave it open for everyone to do whatever they want, right? Um, and it's kind of like they don't, not understanding that, like, that idea of laissez-faire, right? This freedom to be who you want and do whatever, right? Comes with, you know, non-exemplary behavior, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't, you're not actually, there's no one you can look at as for positive mimesis, because everyone is being able to do whatever they want. You see what I'm saying? There's no moral standard, right? Like, you might say,
But that's what I see with what France and all these other countries are having, right? Is that they've got a culture of no boundaries,
right,
but a state with a heavy imprint on
right,
all their lives. And I'm saying
right,
flip it, okay? Just
right,
if
right,
you wanted to make a cheat sheet to those listening to what
right,
I'm saying about all of the problems we have, is flip it.
right,
Put your
right,
moral boundaries back into culture and
right,
ease up on the aggression of the state. That's it.
right,
But we're getting the
right.
opposite. We're getting a
Well,
nihilistic culture in a heavy-handed state,
and
and it's a recipe for disaster.
that's because France sees itself as starting from the place of the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't see itself as starting from the first daughter of the church. You know what I mean? And I think this is this is where the problem is. But I also, you know, it's 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 a difficult thing, because you know you you may want, you want people to follow a certain moral code. You know what I mean? And to do, say the right thing or what have you. But um, forcing them into it is, I guess, the difficult part. Do I force people into
That's the
accepting?
big mistake.
Yeah,
That's my whole like mission statement of my radio program
yeah,
is we need to cultivate boundaries, but
right,
without the force. And right now
right,
we're getting all coercion and no
right,
boundaries. And
right,
and so it's like it's a total mismatch of where we need to go. We need to flip it.
right,
We
yeah,
need to have a society that can say, I better not catch you doing that drug, or I'm gonna give you some tough love as a friend, right?
hmm
As a
hmm
friend or a family
hmm
member. That's the
hmm
difference,
right,
right? But
yeah,
then at the same time, when it comes to the state, when you enter into the introduction of the potential for lethal force,
hmm
now you need to take that sacred, because now you're playing with human life. Now you're playing with, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it
right,
mean to be in the image of God? And if
right,
God does not strike down his enemies when he is being crucified on a cross, how
hmm
much more so should those of us who glimpse the character of God also not strike down enemies who are greedy or decadent or filthy, but they're not doing violent crimes? The
right,
place for law is limited for the stopping of actual violence, the harming of children, things that are actually direct. But
yeah,
this notion of preemptive violence is what's taken place in the law today, right? So
right,
you now have, and let's get into France. What did
okay,
France do?
yeah,
France has been having an interventionist foreign policy. Look at what they did with Gaddafi. They have
right,
unleashed hell.
right,
Okay. And
right,
so they are not sitting there passively, just sitting there, and then all of a sudden these things are happening. Not to excuse those things whatsoever, but
hmm
there is a context here.
yeah,
And Robert Pape has a book called Dying to Win, which traces the roots of suicide terrorism and
hmm
links it to the perception of being occupied by a foreign power,
that, yeah,
right?
and I think it even goes further back than that, right? It goes
Mhm.
further back to, the dismantling of the Ottoman Empire and the replacement of that with France and Great Britain in the Middle East and Africa. So there's, a little bit of resentment, um, and 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 um, and there's, maybe there might not be one period of time. You know what I mean? It could be a culmination of periods, right? It could be the fact that, in the medieval ages, the Muslims were driven out of, Spain and the Holy Land or something like that. You know what I mean? And this has brought about some envy, you know. Um,
At
but
the end of the day, but the recent displacement of people in the Middle East because of countries like France, particularly, I think of Libya, particularly,
mm,
has created a lot of resentment, a lot of
yeah,
humiliation and shame,
right.
and
What
so
I'm
the
saying, yeah, yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is like there's layers. You know what I mean? And those layers, I guess, kind of get put on top of one another. It's hard to actually clarify where the frustration is coming in, because it's like it's continuous. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's been for such a long time. That you know when you say generational, it's like that's literally generational. And you know, um, France has this weird, like relationship with its former colonies and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Whereby like these countries, whether they be North African or Central African or West African or Middle Eastern, they do have a strong hand in the politics, of those countries, right? When the French president backs a certain candidate, you know, in certain countries like that, by all means, that has to be the next president. And when that president doesn't do something that the French Republic likes, then they want to get rid of him by any means necessary. right? And so that I think has been called attention to. Like people are tired of these interventionist this interventionist mentality, that France still
Yeah.
tries to apply.
And the thing is, they want to hide behind this, this enlightenment liberalism or whatever,
Right,
as somehow making them beyond religion, beyond
right,
bigotry. But it's so
right,
fake, it's so flimsy. And the thing is, France is such a heavily regulated economy. If you're not part of the old families and connections with them, you don't have a chance in hell but to just be one of the service workers in the underclass. And
yeah,
those people who come from countries which have been destroyed by
mm-hmm,
France's intervention,
mm-hmm,
participation with other countries in the different regions they come from, then they come over here and they have to do the underclass work. And
right,
they can't start a business without extreme regulations. They can't
mm-hmm,
start this. They have licenses, they have fees.
mm-hmm,
Criminal code, I believe, in some ways is way more backwards than ours. They criminalize
mm-hmm,
speech. They can
yeah,
they go after these mosques,
mm-hmm,
and maybe there's some place for that. I don't know, but the point is, if it's preemptive, it's a problem.
right,
And so people are sitting there and they're saying this is a hypocritical country,
right,
and this is a hypocritical society,
mm-hmm,
and I'm going to go back to their origins. I'm going to go to their church and do horrible things just to show them that I'm going to make you feel pain because I feel
right.
humiliated being here. Well, they shouldn't be there. They should go back home, but their country shouldn't have been messed with by France in the first place because it would still be intact. You know?
That's, I mean, it is the same thing here in the United States. You might say like the sphere of influence. I mean, we've created, uh, you know, standards, I think, since the 17th or 18th century, whereby like European nations could have no dealings in South America, right? If the United States caught European nations interfering with South America or Caribbean affairs, we consider that to be a threat, right? So, it's a sphere of influence, a sphere of domination, right? And which countries get to dominate, what geopolitical spheres, you know what I mean? And, it's like people talk a lot about China being in Africa, right? But it's like the only reason why they're able to be there is because you don't actually want to acknowledge, you know, the kind of, frustration and anger, you know, that you've caused. And so you're still trying to have this, you know, francophone image, and that just is not gonna, that's not, people don't are tired of that. You know what I mean? You know, but you know, again, I think, yeah, it's more so like if France really wanted to lead the way, they would actually be exemplary. They would actually have a moral code of their own and stick to that, right? That would make people want to actually entertain their way of life, right? And the same thing goes for America, right? You have good exemplary behavior and people wanting to actually model themselves after you, then that's where you get, the kind of popularity, right? If you look back at, say, you know, I don't know, post World War II or whatever, like everyone wanted to be like America. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to model themselves after American, you know, ideals or whatever. You know what I mean? Everyone wanted to be a part of the United Nations or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like there's all these things that are coming from the West where people want to obtain that. They want to be like that. And somehow I think we've we've lost that, right? And so we have to impose it, right? And I think, I mean, Kanye was talking about this. I don't know if he addressed it in the sense that, you make people want to be like you through, I guess, impression. You make people want to be like you through example. I don't know if he said that or not, but I don't remember him saying that, um, or if he did or not. But I think that's the mode in which countries that have, um, you know, influence, that's the way to get people to, you know, follow you. Now that doesn't mean that there are going to be people out there who resist that at all costs, you know, because again, it just because you might say, yeah, people want to follow you through good example, you know, because you're an exemplary country or nation or whatever, that doesn't mean that there are going to be people that aren't envious. You know what I mean? Like that could also be the case, that because you're so successful, because you're so influential, there's this envy that crops up. And because of that, you know what I mean, I'm gonna lash
Well,
out.
you have to have the place for self-defense. You know, you have to
Right.
have self-defense. But when we talk about we talk about countries being good role models. I think it's just never going to work that way, because when we say country, we mean crowds.
Right.
And crowds know one thing, which is blame and
Yeah.
aggression. Usually, when it comes to, you know what I mean.
Right.
And so that's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be people being deprogrammed from the crowd mentality of
Yeah.
their country, the prevailing fashions of their time, and having the courage to again put some skin in the game and sacrifice their comfort to go
Right.
out on the line and say, hey, I'm going to, you know, use my life as a living sacrifice for my neighbor.
Yeah.
And if enough folks do that, it'll contagiously spread and it will make the country look good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
See, the problem I have with when we say like we as a nation need to do this, or we as a country need to do this, I do believe that there is a role for a corporate perspective, right?
Right.
But in terms of solving problems, it allows for ignorance and bad moral choices to get filtered in. So, for example, it's kind of like what we saw with the Rogan and Kanye West interview.
Right.
Rogan and them were talking about we need to get healthcare government paid, needs to be free, right? And
Right.
it's like,
Right.
okay, as an individual, there's almost nothing kinder than being a doctor or medical provider and treating someone for free.
Right.
That's called skin in the game.
Right.
But the moment we introduce the bad version of skin in the game, which is skin of my neighbor, is going to be forced into the game, called we're going to forcibly use top-down coercion to bureaucratize completely the management of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to get the results that they want. And so when we say, hey, we as a nation need to fix healthcare, what does a nation do? They use violence.
Right.
Crowds use violence. They say, hey, you're rich, pay more. Take that.
Right.
Hey, you're a doctor. We're going to nationalize you under a database. We're going to bureaucratize you and we're going to give you a little wage and we're going to determine it. Now you're playing God.
Yeah.
Now you're taking shortcuts to heaven that lead to hell. And not to mention things like, well, how are you going to pay for all this? Then you have to abandon God's principle of honest weights and measures and inflate the money supply to introduce new credit. That is an abandonment of being in the imitation of Jesus, because once you introduce new credit, you're doing the same thing they were trying to arrest George Floyd of,
Right.
which is he passed allegedly a fake $20 bill. Well, when you introduce new credit to pay for a new program, you're passing off $20 bills into circulation, which robs your neighbor who's trying to make ends meet, because it makes prices go up to meet with the messing of the economy with the money. So that's what I'm saying is, like, we have to think of things when it comes to answers at the person level.
Mm-hmm.
And then persons can work together and non-violently come up with coordinations to solve problems. That's what we call a market.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, I kind of see it on a, you know, when you talk about like capitalism or something like that, right? Like, but as far as socially, right? You might say, well, yeah, you have all these freedoms, right? But then, like, there's a way that freedom, you know, you can do freedom the good way, and then you can also have freedom, like, you know, that it's like where you get porn and you know, hedonism or whatever, what have you. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't, And that's because, again, I think this really goes back to having freedom doesn't necessarily mean where you just make up your own mind and do everything you want. It's like, yes, there's freedom for you to choose to do what you want, but there needs to be people there to help you, to guide you to positive mimesis, to good behaviors.
But even
And
if there's
that,
not, even if there's not those people in your life, you still got to do what's right.
but see, that's the problem, is that you can't know what's right if you don't have people around you. You know, they may not even be in your life, but the point I'm making is like the culture cannot continue to be one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to. Christianity cannot continue to be TBN. Okay. It cannot continue
Oh
to
shoot!
have.
I was trying to lobby for a late night program on TBN. There goes that idea.
Sorry, man. You can't have that dude coming on at 3 o'clock in the morning talking about cuz God. Okay, you can't have that no more, right? You know what I'm saying? You need people that are really like,
Serious.
that's the person I want to be like them. I want to have that. You know what I'm saying?
But
Like,
would those real people even attract an audience, though? Because if they're truly unconditionally loving, again, the audience is going to say they're too good to be true. They're selling something. And then number two, they're going to, or, they'll say, this is a loser, too passive, like Mr.
right.
Rogers. You know what I mean?
But why can't it be? Why can't it be that you have this? Why can't it be that you have someone that has strict boundaries and still loving person? You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, look, mend your ways. You know what I mean? I love you, but mend your ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
You know what I'm
that's
saying?
that's what everybody needs.
Right,
That's what fathers are supposed to do.
right.
Fathers
So
are supposed to provide boundaries and order, and yet be kind and loving in the modeling of that order,
ex- exactly.
and
And
self-sacrificial. And nobody's doing that. Well, I don't know, but it's so far few between. And
right, yeah. And or it's out of style,
yeah,
right? You know, um,
today we're not supposed to talk about any distinction between mothers and fathers, daughters and sons.
no,
We've lost our way because, I mean, I'd put it this way, man. If you send your kid to government school, and I know it's hard for people,
mhm.
but it's like sending your child to Satan for a nanny service, and then you wonder when he comes back with a Lucifer tattoo. Why? What are you doing? And that steps on everybody's
Right,
toes because everybody's doing it.
right,
But I'm serious, man. I'm
yeah,
so serious, especially if you understand, the mimesis
yeah,
involved, right?
yeah,
If we look at how sponge driven, like how spongeable or whatever we are in our brains, we're just soaking up the role models.
yeah,
And when you think about, you know, that what is the idea that McLuhan says the medium is the message.
mhm,
What is the message of the medium of going to government school or even private school, which imitates the form and fashion and structure of government school? What is the medium of what is the message of that medium? It says that mom and dad or whatever, we don't have time
right,
to role model for you the whole day,
right,
and government has provided a free daycare service for you,
mhm,
and we don't know the guy or girl who's going to be teaching you.
mhm,
We don't know how they're going to make you feel less than.
mhm,
We don't
mhm,
know what the things they're going to say just because they had a problem back at home themselves, or they have a problem with their parental figures or whatever, and they're going to take it out on you because you're different or you're special. They're going to try to squash that individuality out of you. And we say, you know what? I have to do it because I'm in debt.
yeah,
Rent's too high.
yeah.
The house payment's too high.
The
The car
government might
payment.
come after me
Car for what? For homeschool?
for 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 for
Or
not actually, engaging in the curriculum the way it's
right,
supposed to be engaged in.
right.
Right?
So
You
so
don't
that's
you don't send your kid to that one program where they deal with emotional learning. Oh, then you're a bad parent.
right, right. But I'm saying that's the whole system, the idea of putting your kid in a one size fits all education where they're going to be mimetically role modeling who knows whose kids and who knows what teacher and their
Yeah.
problems and how much love do they have for for your child versus you.
Right.
Now, in some cases, it's so bad at home that being at school maybe is a better role model than what's at home, and that's sad, and what's something we got to change. But for the vast majority of folks to be going to government daycare from the time they're a young kid all the way to their college is really sad. And that, I think, is the big gorilla in the room, or the big elephant in the room, because it's like, if you don't take that on, how in the world do you have a place to talk about the lack of role models?
Right.
You went to a government makes government cheese, government makes bombs. Why would you go to a government to do the most important thing, which is to create the right mimetic role modeling for your child? And why would you do that such that they do that for 8 hours a day? Then they got at least an hour and a half of homework at home. Then they got TV time, which is also mediated by government schooling and Facebook or whatever, TikTok or whatever. And then they go to sleep and they do it again. So they don't spend hardly any time with mom and dad. And then mom and dad complain because the culture's going back. And then mom and dad complain when they go to university and they turn into nihilists. And they say, I taught them better than that. Why are they talking about burning down the police and all this stuff? I taught them better than that. It's like, no, you didn't. Actually, the literal amount of time they spent without you and with someone else that didn't care about them as much. I don't care how nice the teacher is. They don't care about your child as much as you do. And for doing that their whole childhood, you outsource the job to somebody else, and then you wonder why it doesn't look anything like you or what you want. Or maybe it picked up the bad aspects about you, like the inability to sacrifice.
You created you created Beowulf's enemy.
What's that?
Oh,
Beowulf's, yeah.
Beowulf's enemy, right?
Yeah,
that monster.
Grendel. You got Grendel in your house, and you don't know what to do with him. And that's what we have today. We got a nation of Grendels. We got a nation of Grendels, and they're letting their little troll mouth speak on Twitter all day long. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you, Rush Limbaugh. You got stage 4 cancer. I hate you, little Grendels. Just hissing and howling, looking for daddy, looking for mama. Just hissing and screaming. Ah! And then you say, hey, wait a second. You don't have to do that, You can have a life that's fulfilling. They just can't do it because they haven't had role modeling. They haven't had, and then you're right. You go to church and you think, I visited a church recently, right? And they haven't stopped texting me constantly like a freaking ad. It's like spamming me for buying their album, buying their music album, buying their merch. I said, what in the world is this? No wonder. No wonder people are going nuts. No wonder people want this woke religion, because at least it has more, like real world, substance.
Yeah, it's not branding, or merchandising and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know, man. It's we gotta, maybe we maybe we gotta start creating apps where you can just have role models, the role model app or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, because it's
now you're trying to brand role modeling. Now you're getting into the church problem.
For me, like, it was difficult to find positive role models. That's, I don't know if I said this to you or not before, but it was difficult for me to find positive role models because, my father wasn't in my life, and I don't talk about these things, but anyways, that's the point, is that it was difficult for me to find positive role models. And, but I also, one thing that I recognized about myself is that I look to older men. And when I say older men, I mean like senior citizens, men that were kind of generations away from me, that I saw and wanted to be like, because I saw their success, or I saw their mannerisms, their behavior, their sense of calm, right? The way that they dealt with situations, you know what I mean? And that's, for me, it's like that's how I want to be,
Mhm.
you know, with my family, you know, my children, or with my community, you know, that sense of dignity, you know, that sense of integrity, that sense of consistency, sense of hard working, you know, uh, diligent, you know what I mean? Uh, a leader in some capacity where it doesn't have to be, you know, I'm the leader of the group, but leader in the sense of example. You know what I mean? Like that's somebody that I wanted to be like. You know what I mean? And it didn't matter to me if they were black, white, Asian, you know, Jewish. It didn't matter to me because I was looking at the man as like this guy is, you know, is successful in his life, not just financially, but like he has, you know, beaten his own demons or something like that. You know what I mean? He's lived a long life. And maybe that life was a struggle. You know what I mean? Maybe he had to do the same thing that I'm doing or going through, right? But he got through it. And I want to do that too. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things that like drew me to Rene Girard, right? Is
Yeah.
this young guy who came from France. He didn't know nothing about America and stuff like that, but he came here and he figured it out, and, you know, stuff like that. I mean, you know,
And
it's like,
he's a real treat to listen to, man. You know, when you
yeah,
so few audio things of his, but like what there is there,
yeah,
it's so cool to listen to, you know, like, cause you know, I'll listen to podcasts every now and then to just to see what's going on out there.
yeah,
And like the different, and I hate to do it, but it's like the difference between what, you know, people trying to sound smart
hmm
versus someone who's
right,
really
right,
relaxed and
yeah,
just cool, you know, like
right,
just really excited about something.
right,
It's
yeah,
just so different, you know,
yeah,
because you can
yeah,
listen to some really super smart people, but
right,
you're still trying to, you know, oh,
yeah,
I got something for you.
right,
And we all
right,
do it, but, and I'm
yeah,
sure Gerard did it, but because
yeah,
we get a lot of his older tapes. I don't know how he
right,
talked when he was 30, you know, or
yeah,
20.
yeah,
Maybe he
yeah,
was
yeah,
kind of goofy too. So
yeah,
we don't want to hold him up too high like an idol,
right,
but
right,
like you, when you listen to a real master who's
yeah,
really humble and yet extremely confident, it
yeah,
is a true delight to listen to them work through ideas. It's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. You know, I really enjoy that, and you know, but it's just trying to find, I guess, contemporaries, you know, your peers that have the same uh, desire, you know,
That's why
to,
I think you and I get along, because it's like I look at you and I say, I don't know how many people my age, literally my age, usually I have to grade on a curve when I say my age, like I got to include 40-year-olds. It's like, no,
yeah,
I'm 31, you know, but
yeah,
like people who are literally my age or younger, around that age, 31, 32, 30, like in
hmm
my age group, when we want to
hmm
talk about the artificial age segregation of growing up in school, right? I have found so few people who have even a ounce of your knowledge of history and passion for real holistic kind of integrated uh, cultural renaissance. And so I mean we got to find these role models where we can.
yeah, man,
And you and I
okay,
had to go from across the entire United States. I'm in Florida, you're in the exact opposite angle, you know,
yeah,
on the other side of the place, and you're surrounded by the land of, you know, Rachel Maddow type ideological anger. And
uh,
there's nothing to be ashamed of that. You know, it's like
hmm
you're in the middle of of a really decadent society that's decaying, and I am too.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
and
That is the word to use. Decadent is definitely, you know, that is the right word right there. You know,
decadent.
yes,
That's what I see as the woke thing. It's all decadence. You know,
yes, yeah,
because you cannot look at these guys in the eyes and say, hey, look, can we stop real violence? Can we stop real suffering? And they say no.
hmm
We need to make sure that Kamala Harris is elected to the next vice president. And you say, but wait a second, wait a second. Yes, she's a woman of color. Yes, she's a daughter of immigrants. That's wonderful. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. But the thing is how does she treat her neighbor?
Right.
How does she treat her neighbor? And you're not allowed to ask that in the woke religion. You
Yeah.
can't ask that question.
Mhm.
How did she treat her neighbor? Did, did, did she live a life? If you want to give her this extreme, holy, sacred power of the state,
Yeah.
because Joe Biden's not going to be doing much, it looks like. She's going to be running the show. Do you really want to say, hey, we check some external boxes of identity, but women of color are still incarcerated under her? Immigrants are still having a hard time under her. And perhaps women or people of color abroad are still having, out of nowhere, a gray sky and a drone strike goes poof. And Kamala Harris, as an icon of this woke religion, is sending a bomb. And that bomb's going to land on some child's head. And he's going to splatter. And that's sick. But we have to say those words. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be gruesome.
Mhm.
Someone's daughter is going to die. Someone's
Yeah.
son is going to die. Someone's grandpa is going to die. They didn't need to. They didn't
Mhm.
need to. But Kamala Harris's fundraisers and bureaucrats want it to happen because they don't have skin in the game. They can
Mhm.
play God. Who would want to maintain that?
Yeah.
Who? And I don't doesn't mean you have to vote for anybody, but the point is who would want to endorse that? I
Mhm.
don't understand that. I really want to know how to help these people in this woke religion because they seem like they really care on some level, but yet there's no substance to it.
Yeah.
And then so many people are converting to this new religion. You know, it's been around for a while, but it's really rearing its religiosity now. It's really showing it. And so many people want to convert to it, Shannon, but I don't understand how to make inroads to these folks because I don't want to play the left right game. You know, I don't want to just stay in one cubbyhole. I don't want to do that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know just as much as as you do, man. It's you don't want to say, well, we gotta mature to become senior citizens before we get it right, or before we, you know, be good examples.
yeah.
But you know, I don't, I don't know, you know,
I don't know what the answer is.
yeah,
I don't know
you
what
know,
the answer is.
for me, it's just, one of the things I do know is that whatever you're doing, you gotta do it on an individual level first.
Yeah,
Where it's like, hey, this is what I'm searching for. Let me get this. Let me internalize these things. Let me learn for myself first. You know what I mean? And I think that's the first step is just, you know, doing some soul searching, man. You know?
I don't understand how to show people how many lies are baked into everything around them. It's just
Yeah,
overwhelming.
yeah,
It is very, very overwhelming, and I think um, maybe that's why Jesus was sweating blood because he could see more of the lies than anybody could apparently. You know,
yeah, yeah.
and when you see the burden of the
Mhm,
deception,
mhm,
it is very discouraging. You know,
mhm.
because you don't know where to begin,
Yeah.
and I mean, just take PUFAs.
Mhm.
I mean, PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. I've been learning about the science behind these PUFAs, and they're in everything. And I know you don't want to worry, and I have a tendency to have worry too much, but it's
Mhm.
like, so you don't want to worry, you don't want to fixate and get all upset, but you look at it and you're like, man, how many people wouldn't need to be on pharmaceuticals if they weren't eating, high fructose corn syrup, processed flours, and polyunsaturated fatty acids, vegetable oils that are not meant for human consumption. And you look at the science and you see that it could be the cause, those three things, the cause of much of the preponderance of comorbidities. And you see the pain and you see the crying and you see the funerals, and you see the amputated legs for diabetics, and you see the missing hair for cancer patients, and you see all of that, and you're like, oh God, how do I even begin to, first of all, articulate this correctly and make sure I've got it correct? And then secondly, how do I stand out when everybody else is selling something so it just looks like I'm just another guy with a shtick, like, oh, you're vegan, I'm this guy, I'm watermelon diet, I'm this, I'm that. And it's just so mind numbing because
Yeah.
everywhere around you, you're looking at a battlefield of suffering, and it
Yeah.
comes into your own life too,
Yeah.
your own family. And then that hurts the most because
Yeah.
you try to put people in the right direction. It just
Mhm.
is so hard. And you say, if
Struggle.
it's so hard to get people to stop eating vegetables, how the hell are we going to stop war?
Right.
We can't even get people to put down canola oil. How are we going to get people to stop throwing people in cages and taxing people and all these big, high level, deep state, surveillances and stuff? It's just so overwhelming. And the depravity of man is just so all enveloping.
Yeah.
And so, people like you and I, we're like dreamers, and we're like, I think we kind of find rest in imagining, we want to go, we have to check out
Yeah.
because we're sensitive. We're like magnetic. We're just so sensitive to all this stuff. So we check out into the fantasy of anthropology or the fantasy of futurism. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
Like
Yeah.
let me control
Yeah.
the chaos I can't control in real life by
Yeah.
saying, oh, it reminds me of thousands of years ago what they did
Right.
to Odin sacrifice ritual, because it feels safe.
Right.
It feels comfortable.
Because it's in your head,
Yeah.
No, and nobody else is in there, so you can romanticize and imagine and do all these things in your head that nobody else can tamper with
Yeah.
or try to
Or you can
distort.
visualize we're going to have anti-gravity and energy too cheap to meter and all these little things, and you can
Yeah.
fantasize it's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a way of, it's just like, in some sense, like playing video games or something. You're
Mm-hmm.
just numbing out
Mm-hmm.
from the pain.
Mm-hmm.
But so what's the difference? Well, I guess we could say, well, we think ours is actually related to reality,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
some way to bring that into reality. But it's a tough thing, it's very daunting when you really look at it, honestly.
Yeah.
We tell ourselves every day, oh, that the energy revolution, nuclear fusion is coming anytime. We're gonna figure it out. Or
Right.
but it's not. We're waiting. That movie title, Waiting for Superman. We're always waiting for Superman to come.
Right.
And some of that is, a religious thing. I'm waiting for Jesus to come back, so I don't got to fix the world. Or
Right.
somebody else says, I'm waiting for AOC to arrive on the throne and fix all the problems with some radical
Yeah.
socialism. Or somebody
Yeah.
says, I'm waiting for the return of Ronald Reagan from the dead. I'm waiting for, whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, it's at the same time, a little bit of that is good, right? Because you need those people that tell you, make the way straight. Hear the one crying in the wilderness. Hear the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, right? You need some John the Baptists. You know what I mean? You need some John the Baptists just to keep it going and keep it vigorous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's necessary because Jesus said, that there were many that waited for that day to come and did not see it.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about himself coming into the world.
Mm-hmm.
He's speaking about the prophets and the ancients, right? That many are them that waited for this day to come, and they did not see this day come, but they believed it. They believed in it, right? And they tried to prepare themselves, by living exemplary lives, and try to prepare others for that. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's something where we have to take all or share the whole. Like be the ones to be burdened by all of this. You know what I mean? We are also a product of our age and our generation, and sometimes that is hard to break out of because you that's the way you grew up. And so you know, I think we're doing our part in trying to kind of break out of the mold that we grew up with when it comes to like our peers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because most of the people that are our age that went to high school and graduated in 2006, 2007, 2008, whatever, you know, they're not talking about this stuff. They're not talking about anything that we're talking about. They're all, you know, it's all about being driven by, I'm able to be financially stable, buy a home, and tell everybody else that I'm successful,
Mhm.
right? Get married, have a kid or two, and you know, I'm good. I got good credit, you know what I mean? I got a pension, I got whatever. You know what I mean? I'm good for the rest of my life, right? And you know, we grew up with that same mentality. You know what I mean? And so it takes some real searching, you know, and real like, you know, in-depth reading and stuff like that to actually just to clear your thoughts and to kind of reshape, you know, the way you see the world. You know, if that takes work, then it's going to take even more work to actually apply it, because you got to figure out, how do you apply this? How do you apply all this stuff that you know? How do you apply all this stuff that you know because because you searched on your own, not because you were told whatever in school, because you were actually curious enough to go look for it, or because you were tired enough of hearing the same stuff, right?
Well, that's why it's
And you
important to
had to
create a
go for it.
conspiracy, you know,
You know
like
what I
Peter
mean?
Thiel calls it, conspiracy of people that want to work with you, that have
Yeah.
talents to come together to create a business or a project, right? Because you can
Right.
accelerate things if you find the right people who complement your lack of knowledge or expertise or skill set, right?
Right.
And that can accelerate it.
Right.
But I did like in that interview with Kanye and Joe Rogan, I think he mentioned at some point, or both of them mentioned, that we need to unite around not around enemies, but around tackling diseases and economic poverty. And you know, he talks about Plan A, which is his plan to
Mm-hmm.
provide facilities for people to be encouraged to give birth rather than to. So he doesn't want to make a law about abortion. He wants to just provide a huge like reimagining of adoption and make it so more
Mm-hmm.
attractive for people to take as the first choice. And that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
Yeah.
the idea of him saying, can we unite around, solving problems, rather than fighting enemies? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
question we always ask, that's very mimetic. Can we replace the
Yeah.
scapegoat of our tribal enemies with this, an enemy like cancer? I think cancer doesn't have a face to it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
COVID doesn't have a face to it.
Right.
And I think, like
Mm-hmm.
they said, I think the idea that we can come together around problems that are not human, like don't have a
Mm-hmm.
face. I
Mm-hmm.
think COVID showed that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it could in some other way, but I look at that and I thought, they kept writing articles. Hey, look, we're all coming together, but it's like, no, we
Mm-hmm.
weren't. We
Yeah.
didn't come together. It devolved very quickly, and half the country, everything Republicans and Trump did was evil, and half the country it was the opposite. Half the country it was China.
Mm-hmm.
Half the country it's this or that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there was no ability to say, hey, let's all just solve the disease, because we couldn't agree on what the solution was for the disease. You know what I mean? Some people said herd
Yeah.
immunity.
Yeah.
Some people said lockdown and put a mask on when you're hiking in a deserted forest. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
some people, it's just like, so I don't know if we can
Mm-hmm.
unify around a problem like that. But I do know that if you've got something tangible and it works, that speaks for
Mm-hmm.
itself. So if you can have
Mm-hmm.
a Wright brothers take off on a plane, now you got something to look at.
Right.
And we didn't have that for COVID. We don't
Right.
know,
Right.
because it's hard to measure. Was it the vitamin
Right.
D3? Was it the zinc? Was it the hydroxy? Was it the Z-Pack? Was it the whatever? We don't know what the answer is, because
Mm-hmm.
medical science is so politicized that it's a slowed down, it's a low resolution field in a lot of these situations.
Yeah.
But like if we could have more tangible, real solutions, you know, like
Mhm.
Wright brothers did, where okay, that thing's up off the air. Okay,
Mhm.
we can see that. Now,
Mhm.
can we
Mhm.
make that safer? Can we make that
Mhm.
safer? Can we make that better? Can we
Mhm.
make it faster? That's what we need.
Mhm.
And Joe Rogan was
Yeah.
alluding to that too in some of his
Yeah.
discussions, that technology could be the thing that
Yeah.
brings us into the next evolution or something. But ultimately,
Yeah.
if we don't have role models wielding that technology in a virtuous and righteous way, we're going to be in real trouble, aren't we?
I said that many times. Right? It's like, you can't have, you know, the rogue, you know, Lone Star, whatever, uh, who's upset about something and takes that, you know, in another direction. You know what I mean? It's got to be, you know, and maybe that means you need to include that guy who might be a little rogue in this, so he don't go off and you know, I don't know, create whatever,
I tell you
Lord
one
Vader or
thing:
something.
if you don't want a society that has an epidemic of rogue actors, you don't create speech codes and you don't delete articles
That's
off the face of
that's
the internet.
that's a good,
You know what I mean?
that's another one. Yeah, stop shutting people down because
You can't even link to these articles, and the media doesn't acknowledge what these Biden
hmm
family people do and all this. And it's like you're not going to have a society that's going to last if you
hmm
keep that up. But that, hey, welcome to the jungle. This is where we're at.
yeah, man.
It's a tough. There's a lot of people, and they're sowing a lot of corruption and evil and ignorance, weaponized ignorance.
hmm hmm
And you know what? We gotta take up our cross.
yeah,
Nobody wants to do
yeah,
that. Nobody wants to take up the cross.
yeah, that's true, man. you know I I'm with you there. I you know so we'll take up ours and you know do the best we can. All right, don't go to that forest because so and so is over there. You know what I mean? You go to this forest or whatever, and Diana might be there, so you want to pay homage to her. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't know. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like you have to see it as, like, for me, the way I look at it is like everything that I think of Christianity wise is like it's post it's what happens after Christianity. The way that I'm thinking about things and the way that I interact with stuff is just because I'm able to see a world that was different from the one that's pre-Christian. You know what I mean? So for me, like what the way I look at it is that those stories are meant to give you the faith and the belief that it's possible for those things to happen, right?
What things to happen?
For us to, whatever you want to say. I mean, walk on water, live longer. You know what I mean? Uh, defeat death. You know what I'm saying? Uh, defeat sickness and aging, right? For me, I think the Christian message is that we are, as Christians, meant to, overcome those human barriers. And that is something that the other religions were not able to provide. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. Those other religions were not able to provide this transcendence. What they were able to provide is appease the gods, do what they ask you to do, and you'll have a good harvest. Do what they're telling you to do, and your son won't die from sickness. Do what they ask you to do, and you'll be a powerful leader. You see what I'm saying? But with the Christian message, whether it happened or not, it's the Christian message helps you to escape from this appeasement of the gods. right? Because that's not what God is actually asking you to do, right? And it's not asking you to sacrifice someone else to get what you want. You know, he's asking you to actually put in work and put in maybe a collaborative work. You know what I mean? Build a community where you can actually, you know, do things, be successful, right? It's about creating the right type of city. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus the one that you talk about, like that's founded on murder.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So for me, whether Jesus walked on water or not is not the point. The point is like he calmed the seas. He told the way, you know, he told things to be still, peace be still, right? That to me, that sends a message of calming chaos. You are able to put chaos in its place. You see what I'm saying?
Is
You
that
are
a
able to.
psychological reading then?
It's
Like
a psycho.
Jordan Peterson would do?
No, it's
Not to
not.
go
It's
too
not,
far there, but I'm just saying.
no, it's not a psychological reading. It's an anthropological. It's like a mythological one, right? Like these things, chaos is real. Like things happen in the world that are chaotic. You have tsunamis, you have storms, you have meteorites, and blah blah blah. That's chaos. For the ancients, they would have seen chaos as like a god or a deity. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And for me, like I do kind of see those things as like having some kind of power, like a powerful force. You know what I mean? I don't know if they have a life force or not, but they're there.
Yeah.
And they need to be dealt with. Otherwise, it's just going to keep happening.
You mean get
So
rid of storms?
you need to get rid of. You need to be able to contain it, right? So it doesn't cause havoc, right? So that to me is the thing. Like it's like when Paul says like, you know, because I think Paul, his whole thing was like it's not the fact that there aren't other gods that exist. It is the fact that there are gods, but they're lesser gods. They're demons. You see what I'm saying? And they need to be destroyed
And how do you destroy them?
by working collaboratively, right? Working together, but believing in the Christian message that this can happen. Right. So like we talked about the initial stage was Christ dispelling these myths of, you know, and this sacrifice and scapegoating and all this kind of stuff, right? And the fear of the unknown, right? That's why we want another person to die in our stead, right? Is because we have fear of the unknown, right? And so the way that they thought of it is like if somebody dies, you stave off the fear of the unknown, you stave off death. You see what I'm saying? But Christ is saying you don't have to do that. You can work together. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Right?
Yeah. And it reminds
you know, you can worry about it, but worry about it in the sense that you defeat it. You know, tackle it.
Remember Obi-Wan in Star Wars original movie? He said, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Right.
And then he laid down his life as Darth Vader killed him. Right. That wouldn't have happened without Jesus, right? That movie scene.
Exactly. You see what
because
I'm saying?
even though they don't get it fully right, they're still saying, don't fear death. You know, yeah. I'm not afraid. I'm not gonna keep fighting you
right
with the desire to try to save my life. You can take my life and I will become more powerful. And when you really believe in that, that's huge, right?
Right. And why is that? It's because the person that just died has already passed off the baton to somebody else before you killed him. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? So somebody else had already picked it up.
The martyrs
exactly.
And the apostles, yeah.
Exactly. And they're running. And when they die, they don't already pass it off to somebody else. So it's too late. You can't stop it, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the kingdom of God spreading on earth.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, man.
Very good.